I don't even want to know.
You get shown that a lot in probation. A lot.
What is that?
Shut the fuck up.
Yeah, shut your mouth and open your eyes and ears. A lot. I'm not saying that to you guys. I'm just doing this. I'm trying to get you to come teach it.
Oh, bro. I don't want to teach girls.
You don't want to teach about like abused children
I know.
with burns on their body?
No, that's very sad.
Okay. All right.
The burn
so-
guy did it.
Huh?
The burn guy that we had did a good job on child abuse with burns.
Oh, did you guys have a lot of pictures and stuff?
Uh-huh.
Oh, cool. So what are the big takeaway points that you guys took from that?
Clean, warm, and dry.
Clean,
Huh?
dry.
Clean, warm, dry.
Clean, warm, and dry. Okay.
Airway,
But we're not
airway.
talking about treatment right now. We're talking about recognition.
Soft burns and glove burns. The lot.
He had talked about like
Like-
circumference
Their
burns.
explanation of what
Lines.
is happening and what is seen on kid.
So,
Storyline, yeah.
so would kids normally have a distinct line across both their legs?
Not usually.
Would kids usually not have additional burns if they got burned right here and only down here? Would they not have burns up here at all, usually? So if they're being dipped into hot scalding water, what are you gonna, if somebody was,
Flailing there or
yeah,
something.
flail, right? So you're gonna get those splash marks. So you're gonna get additional wounds in different locations, right? What other kind of burns are there? What are the most common one?
There was
Dip burns.
Okay?
curling iron.
Well, that wouldn't be abuse.
Let's think intentional burns.
Hair dryer.
We saw a
Ooh,
curling
yeah.
iron burn.
Curling iron burns.
There we go, cigarettes, right? Cigarettes and lighters, because those are the most easily accessible things. Those are the things that people have on their hand when they get irritated. Do they have time to walk over, boil a pot of hot water, come back over, and then do it? Or is it one of those immediate, right, when you think about it, angry, boom, and it happens, right? So it's usually something that they have on them at the time of the incident, okay? So we won't spend a lot of time on this since you guys cool got that taken care of for the most part. Fractures. Does it take a lot to fracture some of the bones in a kid?
Oh,
Why does it take a lot? The answer is yes.
green stick.
Because the green stick.
Okay, what
Pliable.
there you go. So kids are a lot more flexible, right? You need to pass that, no?
No,
Somebody sign your name?
Janae signed it for me,
Oh,
so I'm signing it for her.
Wait, what?
You can make something up there if you want.
You just wrote about
He's just making names now, okay? So a lot of times kids are a lot more flexible, right? So it's a little bit harder to break the bones. Do you think, how about the rib locations? How easy is it to break kids' ribs?
Not very easy.
Do they have a lot of pliability? Do they have a lot of movement?
Yes.
So if you have a kid that has broken ribs, a flailed segment, what is that telling you?
There's a lot.
Significant mechanism of
There's a
injury.
significant mechanism of injury, high index of suspicion that something's going on, and then we get back to the history, right? So we get back to that history of what caused this, right? Oh, the kid fell down. The kid was running and tripped and fell.
That's an interesting story.
off a
It's
cliff.
an interesting story. What would you like to know, Mons?
Was he running? Or like, can I ask him to explain
Yeah,
further?
he was running, tripped, boom, down he went. That's what mom and dad
What
said.
side did he fall
He fell on his right side.
Does that match the description of
No
what?
chronic medical conditions. Ooh, that's a good one.
What is that? Is that, do I see injury present on the right
Yeah,
side?
there's a flail segment on the right
Did he
side.
fall on something?
No.
Is there a hand?
The kid's not answering any questions.
Oh, damn it.
Mom and dad or dad is answering every question for you.
Does the kid have?
There's a
any
high index of
movement
suspicion
around?
of abuse.
Is the kid?
Can we remove mom and dad?
Ah, you don't even have to remove mom and dad, but you can simply eliminate mom and dad from the history taken part by doing one simple question, by one simple statement. I appreciate the information, but right now I need them to answer because I have to assess their level of consciousness. I need to know how oriented they are. And if they start to give you feedback and be like, well, it's like, okay, I appreciate it, but I'm gonna need you to have to go stand over there. And at that point, you can have them stepped away, right? But most of the time, boom, if you come back to that, I need you to be quiet because I need them to answer. Most of the times, either direction, even if they are the wrong story, they're giving you the wrong story and stuff like that, you can basically start to talk to the kid and stuff, And you get to that point where you're not necessarily asking right in front of mom and dad, but you're getting enough of the thing where you can kind of lead the story in the direction of like, oh, so you were running and you tripped and fell, and you kind of manipulate the story. That's not the same as what mom and dad gave you, right? So you're wrong on purpose in an attempt to try and figure out what's going on. And as soon as you start getting these multi-story things going on, that index of suspicion, you don't call them out right there, you don't be like, you liar, right? So now you gotta be more tactful with that history taking. Okay, we need to separate, we need to get the whole story figured out.
Would you just remove them from the room possibly?
The kid or the mom or the
The
dad or?
parents, yeah.
If you can figure out a good reason to, because what happens a lot of times if you try and remove somebody that they know that they did something wrong. Yeah, I mean, not necessarily combative, but it's gonna escalate things and they're gonna get angry and irritated and leave, get you out of here, I don't want you here, because they have the right to refuse for their kid.
Uh-huh.
But what happens if you have an abused kid? Now what?
You become an advocate.
Now we're in
You
those
gotta
gray areas, right?
Yeah.
Is this a very gray area? Or is it pretty clear what we have
You've gotta
the
get
duty to
PD
do?
in, you've gotta get PD involved.
Right, you have to, right? Until you can get clarification. Like, is there a time where you may have, I mean, you may have to step out and wait at the front door and wait for cops to come back? I mean, probably not gonna wait at the front door, probably make a loop around the block just in case mom or dad goes in for some sort of weapon or something, right? You're not gonna hang out there, but, it's something that you definitely have to get PD involved pretty quickly with it, okay? All right, so, any sort of injuries to the, rib, cage, anything like that, it's high index of suspicion. Any sort of twisting, type injuries, that don't make sense with the story that they give you that they created. Head injuries,
Big head.
it's a big head, right? So what type of injuries do we commonly see with abused kids with the head? What's the quickest, most common way for children to be abused?
What?
Shaking babies
No,
syndrome?
not necessarily shaking baby.
That's-
Just the smack, right? So kid won't be quiet, boom. The kids get hit, right? And then what happens then? Then the kid cries more. And then what happens?
Smacked
And they
again.
get smacked again, right? Stop crying, they hit him again, right? So it continues to escalate. And so they figure that if it didn't work the first time with the smack, what are they gonna do the second time?
Smack
Smack 'em
harder.
harder.
Smack them harder, right?
Bigger
So it
hammer.
increases in severity, And then they move to the potential of using objects, right? Striking with objects, right? So these are ones where it's like, you will go on a unresponsive kid. You'll go on a seizure patient, right? And so we roll in thinking, oh, it's probably a febrile seizure. We see a little bit of maybe blood coming from the nose. Blood coming from the mouth. What are you thinking now?
That's not normal.
Kid bit his tongue, right? See, I totally set you guys up for that one. Right? So that's a normal thing in a seizure, right? Blood coming from the mouth.
You said nose.
And nose, either one, right? So you have to really start getting into some of the history, be like, oh, seizure, hey, tell me about the seizure, just get a history of it, what happened, what's going on with this? And they're like, yeah, I don't know, the kid's never had a seizure before, sounds like the kid fell down yesterday at school, hit their head at school yesterday, or something along those lines. You're like, huh, yesterday, okay, that's weird. And then you start getting into some of the things, right? Do we do full assessments on everybody? Subconscious, unresponsive? Do we do head to toes? Do we touch, feel, palpate?
Yes,
Yeah.
Are you guys gonna do a better job of it
yes.
from now on,
Yes.
right? Because now you're gonna be looking for everything under the sun. That's what you guys should be doing on every single patient anyways, right? Because you're looking for those little tricks, those little things that you miss because you walk into something with a preconceived notion that, oh, this is a seizure patient, when actually you're going on an abused child that actually has a depressed skull fracture going on, yeah.
For that example, if a parent said that they fell yesterday, would there be a difference in color of the bruise?
It all depends on whether or not the kid's gonna bruise up, depends on whether or not it's on the skull, if you can see the bruise. if you have injury, if you have depression, if you have any, a lot of it's just gonna depend on what type of injury is associated with it. If it's just a straight up bruise, like on the cheek or something like that, yeah, it's gonna be already a developed bruise, right? Versus something that's just kind of red still, right? Red equals what?
Fresh,
Fresh, right? If it's purple or yellow already,
it's a little older.
stages of healing, right? Okay,
Do you have any history behind the picture on the right?
no, none. Shaken baby syndrome. What kind of call are we gonna go on with this?
Unresponsive?
SIDS, right? It's gonna be dispatched as a cardiac arrest with a 3-month-old. And we get there, and this is probably the most important size up that you're gonna do, okay? Because this kid's gonna be in one of two places. They're either gonna be in the crib still, or they're gonna be on the middle of the floor of the living room, okay? And why are they in the middle of the floor in the living room?
Because that's
Mom and
where
Dad was
they're
trying to calm them down, walking around, and then they did it.
Pulling out of the
What happens
crib.
when you call 911?
Something doesn't go right.
They tell you to put them on the
They
floor.
tell
and
you to
do
put them on the floor and you start CPR, okay? So if this baby's still in the crib, what is that telling you?
They didn't do
They
CPR.
didn't do CPR, they didn't do anything, they weren't trying to help this person, right? And so as you walk through the door, there's three presentations that you're going to get. You're going to get you walk through the door and here's the baby in your hands, which is bad for you, like your thought process, you don't have that 2 seconds of, okay, all right, here we go, right? Before you get there, right? It's, you open the door and boom, right? Those are always fun scenarios. And baby go, right? You don't have time to process it and prepare yourself. So you have the one where it's handed to you. You have the one you open up the door and they're screaming at you when you knock on the door, because you always knock on the door, we don't just go flying in, right? Knock on the door, they're screaming at you, so you crack the door and they're doing CPR in the middle of the floor. And then you have the one where they're in the living room and they're like, yeah, the baby's in the room. It's like, huh, baby's in the room. So right then, flags start going up, right? It's like, something's up, like. So from the time it takes me to walk from the living room to the bedroom, what am I doing?
You're watching out for
Following
yourself,
everything.
and you're looking at everything around you. You're doing a good scene size up.
Right. And what am I doing? What am I asking them as I'm walking? What am I asking the parents, the people, the adults, whoever's there, the babysitter?
What happened? When did this happen?
That was the last time you saw him.
When's the last time you saw the person fine? What happened between here and there? How long has it been? What was happening? Was the person sick beforehand? Was the baby sick? What kind of conditions were there beforehand? Right? And if at any point I get an answer I don't like in any of those, it's automatically sending up more red flags to do more of an assessment into the area where I'm moving into. Okay? If you show up and you have blood coming from the baby's nose or mouth, ears, what are you thinking?
Red flags.
Red flags, right? It's all red flags. What happens when the babysitter or a significant other or the parent has a baby that's new to parenting, the kid won't stop crying? What do? You guys ever held a baby that cries a lot?
Uh-huh.
Frustration builds, and finally you're just like, go in the shaken baby syndrome, like I've looked at my daughter at times as she's screaming at me, I'm just like, I can understand where shaken baby syndrome comes from. I was like, I get it, and I see you, I love you so much, but you're killing me right now. Some people don't have the ability to reason through and de-escalate those kinds of thought processes, and so what do? They get frustrated, and they're just like, just stop crying, please, right? And then they start the shaking part of it, right? What does that do? Does the kid have the ability to support their head?
No.
Most of the time, what happens when the shaken baby syndrome occurs? What you say?
neck.
Neck, right? So snap a neck, break a neck, C1, C2, what does that do to the respiratory drive?
Stop censoring.
Gone, right? Depending on whether or not the baby gets thrown down or knocked against stuff, you end up with subdural bleeds, swelling in areas, injuries all over the body, okay? So things can escalate. So when you get there, you're doing a good quick scene size up. As you're starting to do your compressions, because things that we'll look for with that bleeding and stuff is like, do we want to pronounce an infant? Do we transport almost every single one of them? Are almost, well, no, I should say, are some of them crime scenes?
Yes.
How important is your scene size up now in your mind as you're walking in, the documentation for what you saw when you walked through the door?
Huge.
Very important, right? Because anytime a infant child dies, what are they gonna do? More than likely, they're gonna do an autopsy, right? They're gonna try and figure out what the cause of death was. And so then, they go in and they find basal skull fractures, they find these fractures. What does that then do?
Put some more.
More red flags.
More red flags, right? So it ends up going to court, right? And so you end up going on the stand, right? You guys depressed yet? I am. Abdominal injuries? Yes.
I'm sorry, for like SIDS cases though, you don't get like a real spontaneous infant death. You don't have parents that are scared to be in the room with a baby that's a victor.
Not usually. Not usually. Nope. So usually what happens is the parents are doing everything in their power to help because they don't want their infant to be dead. Like they're looking at it, baby died sometime during the night. They're seeing the cold cyanotic baby, but they don't want, they're like, if I can do anything, I've never walked in where it was a legitimate SIDS call that they weren't doing CPR on. They're always doing everything they can, and as soon as you get there, like it's basically you go in, they peel off and basically just collapse because they're emotionally and physically exhausted from everything that they just went through in the 10 minutes before we got there. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Can abdominal injuries hide a bunch?
Mm-hmm.
Can somebody bleed out in their abdomen? Are they gonna have bruising, tenderness, swelling? You guys gonna palpate, you're gonna find it, feel it, right? Okay? All right, signs of neglect. Oh,
Is that Pepsi mouth?
that is meth mouth for a 10-year-old.
Meth mouth?
They've been feeding the kid meth for 10 years.
I watched a documentary on,
Pepsi mouth.
Pepsi mouth.
Yeah, the Mountain Dew. Mountain
Dew mouth,
Mountain Dew
yeah.
mouth, yeah. Culprit. It
That-
basically eats away that right there. That's what it turns around, yeah. So you got some Mountain Dew in your little flask there, Cody?
Oh, I'm sure Mountain Dew, man.
Oh, okay.
Another fat joke, man.
Dude, just so you know, I don't think you're fat. Yeah. Yeah, I think you are perfect. I mean, you could improve your medic skills a little bit, and then you'd be above perfect.
Okay.
All right, severe diaper rash. Kids that haven't had their diaper changed in a couple days, right? Wet, wet, wet. Constant diaper rash. Big things to look for. We talked about like the quadriplegic that doesn't get out of bed, can't get moved. Same kind of thing with diaper rash, that kind of thing.
That should also be for geriatric patients as well that need changing of
Mhm.
diapers, right?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. So there's a bunch of different things to look for. They're pretty obvious types of things. Like you have the average looking child, and then you have the ones where there's like, oh, this person does not look healthy, right? So signs of emotional abuse, this is basically the withdrawn, they don't want to interact, they don't want to be involved, they detach from everything, anything they like, toys, they have no interest in anything, they just want to be by themselves and kind of isolate themselves. A lot of the humiliation, the rejection, so that's where a lot of the, as you get there, the kind of bonding that you do with them, you're trying to befriend them, like it's all positive reinforcement. You're checking things out, trying to figure out what they like, trying to just kind of get to know them. Like, what's your favorite toy? Do you have any cool stuffed animals, anything like that? That's why we always carry stuffed animals on the ambulance, right? Because you find out what kind of stuffed animal they like. And you're like, yes, it's the one of the 3 things that we got in there, right? So we have like 900 teddy bears, right? But then they're like, oh, hey, do you like teddy bears? No, I hate teddy bears. How about lizards? Yeah, or something else, right? So it's that kind of thing. So those things are very, very helpful to be able to present to kids to help gain their trust, because you name it, create this person that they can kind of hug onto and get some of that emotional connection that they haven't been able to get, right? Is it super, super heartbreaking when a patient or a pediatric will latch on to you and not let go? Absolutely, right? Those are rough. From a dad standpoint, those are by far the hardest ones, like, because you know something is not right at home, and you're like, okay, guess what? I just adopted you, right? I'm like, and so the interesting thing about it is like when they latch on, like getting them out of car accidents and stuff like that, like when kids will latch on, they're like, okay, this is like, you are now their comfort zone. Like, do you move on? Do you go take care of other people? Or are you latched on now too? I'm a big latcher, what can I say, right? Hugs all around. I'm like, oh, do you have other siblings? Okay, here we go. Okay, oh, there's a third one. I played this number 3 game. Okay, there's only one of me. Okay, let's figure this out, right? Okay, rotate. But it's that kind of thing, like going to the hospital, same kind of thing. Like I've climbed up in the ER bed at times with people when they're just latched on, they don't want to let go, and be like, okay. I'm like, okay, we're out of service for a little while until we can create some sort of separation, right? Do you think I come back and I check on them every single time I come back to the hospital then? Absolutely, right? Because you gotta make sure that they're still doing okay, right? Those are the ones that, like, for everything that we do, those are the calls that actually legitimately make a difference, so. No human contact, terrorize, bully, verbal assaults, threats, feelings of fear and anxiety. How about cyberbullying? Is there a lot of that right now?
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a ton of that at the middle school level. I just learned something the other day. There's like, I don't know, 20 kids at my daughter's middle school that all have this suicide pact thing going. I'm like, are you kidding me?
Wait, what?
What's that?
Yeah, so they're all like, they all want to kill themselves all together. Right? Because their life is so miserable, and it's the end because people are picking on them and they don't fit in, they're not in the in crowd. So it's one of those times like you find out about that kind of thing, and so then you're just like, whew, that's a big deal, right? That's a big deal for that many kids to think that there's something that wrong with their life to even be considering that. And then it's the cool thing, right? They want to be liked and accepted by somebody. And so like my daughter told me about this, I'm like, so, like, you know I love you, right? She's like, oh yeah, don't even worry about it. She's like, I don't even know what's going on with them. I'm like, okay, well you're not bullying them, are you?
You gotta make sure she's not the right person.
Dad, she's like, Dad. I was like, well, I know that you don't talk to any of them or anything like that. They're not your group. I'm like, so then I just asked the kids that age. I'm like, so like, what would make them want to do that? And she's like, it's just a cool thing. She's like, they don't have anybody that, like their parents are never home, they're not around, they don't have that support. I'm like, have you ever like tried to like be their friend, like to talk to them? It's like, yeah, but then they get really mad and angry and say, leave you alone. I'm like, all right, I just don't get hooked up with them, okay? We good here, yeah? And so they just, some of those kids, like you'll go on those calls where like a parent will call because they're just like, yeah, they're depressed and they got this, they took all these pills. And so then you have to work through some of that history around the events leading up to that. Okay. All right, so what do we do for these? We do our normal care, right? Do all our normal care. If there's life-threatening emergencies, we deal with it. We treat all the patients the same. So if a refusal to transport, remain at the scene and contact police and request child placed in protective custody. So this is the thing where it's like they're screaming at you to get out of the house, leave us alone, we don't want you to go. It's like, okay, well, if it starts to become unsafe for you, you step back, and then you get the police involved. Okay. Report. You got 24 to 48 hours to finish your report, to have a written report. So you get to the hospital, you give your pass off, you give your verbal report, right? You immediately contact DHS if it's a child. Contact DHS, let them know what it is, what's going on. Contact the police department, let them know. And once that's completed, then you go through and you fill out the State of Oregon child abuse form that's located on, basically, you Google child abuse, how to report child abuse in Oregon, pops right up, and gives you all the information, gives you a little flow chart of how to go through and check those kinds of things. 24 to 48 hours. Does that give you much time? What can happen if you don't get that stuff done 24 to 48 hours?
Class A violation.
Bruises go away.
Yeah, the likelihood that you don't get it reported. It's worse.
Yeah, so it doesn't get reported, the kid goes home, right? Right, let's say you don't make the phone call, it's a weekend. You told the ER staff, hey, yep, this person is abused, blah, 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 you call DHS, and it's late Saturday night, okay, yeah, nothing happens, we'll get to it on Monday. You contact the cops are like, yeah, we don't have anybody available, we'll get somebody out there as soon as you can. So if you fill out that report immediately, it forces the cops to have to deal with it right then and there, right? So they don't have anything official until you get that paperwork for that, and basically it fast forwards that process for them, forces them to show up and be there.
What was that called again?
The State of Oregon child abuse. Yeah, just Google State of Oregon child abuse form, and it gives you the entire, or State of Oregon reporting child abuse.
Okay.
And it gives you an entire flow chart. It gives you like how to report that, how to report elder abuse. It gives you all the phone numbers and ORSs that are connected to it, who's mandatory reporters, all that stuff. Okay. Okay. I think that's the child abuse. I think we'll handle child abuse. No, we're not gonna do any of those. All right, cool. That's what we got. We'll do elder abuse tomorrow. Look at that.